Now, despite transfer news coming out every single day to do with Arsenal, it is time to look at yet another attacker, being Bryan Mbuemo. Now, with the recent reports that Arsenal are looking at buying him this summer, in this video we're going to talk about why it would be a great signing and why he is exactly the player that Arsenal should look at buying. So let's get into it. Now, first of all, sorry for the lack of uploads recently. I had a little bit of a break, had things going on, so we couldn't make any videos, but we are back once again talking about more transfer news, which is already getting overwhelming, to be honest, before the window has even started. Now, today we are obviously going to talk about Mbuemo. Now, if you haven't seen the recent reports, it looks like Arsenal are looking at maybe getting him in, although not necessarily reliable with linked to everyone at the moment, but he could be a player for around 40 to 50 mil that the club feel like is undervalued in today's market and should be worth more, which could potentially be sold for more in the future, but he still has more to bring, which I ultimately agree with. Now, first of all, there is going to be a lot of criticism or maybe concern about Mbuemo as a player because he is a right winger, not a place of priority for Arsenal because obviously we have Saka there, but ultimately I've always said that I think getting forwards in is the biggest thing at the end of the day. Now, despite also being able to play a right wing, he can play in a false nine, sort of two-man setup up front, but could be moved into a false nine in a three up front as well by himself, and I don't think he is just necessarily tied down to that right wing spot, and we will get into why the intricacies of it could really help us as a team. Now, first of all, Bryan Mbuemo, in my opinion, is one of the best final third players within the Premier League. He is not someone that is necessarily going to help you in so much of build-up. I mean, you look at how many passes and completion he has per 90, it is very low for forwards. And often, even though he will come back and help defend in a lot of big games and be that sort of cover if needed to be, he's not someone that is really going to come deeper and pass the ball around. I would say out of anyone in the Premier League, he gives me more Mohamed Salah vibes because he is that guy that you want on the last defender, really far away from the play, where you can just lift that ball over to and he can make some magic happen, which is we've seen consistently him do for Brentford this season. And straight away, when you first look at his goal contributions in the Premier League over the last couple of years, it shows a player that is not only getting better by age, but also at the age of 25 hasn't even really reached his peak yet, and it's definitely someone that is already capable of showing his ability at the highest level, and it's not a player that you have to wait around to get end results, which we have seen a lot of Arsenal other wingers really be spoke about. And with Mbuemo always improving every single season, I mean, this year he has 19 goals and 7 assists in the Premier League. Of course, there is some penalties involved in that as well, which he probably won't take at Arsenal, but he is a great pen taker. But ultimately, his goals and assists are at such a high level where you have to consider him if Brentford are talking about that 50 mil price, which is rumoured, which I think is very fair enough. Now, the reason why I like Mbuemo for Arsenal, though, is because fundamentally he brings something different to the team. Now, this is always going to cause a bit of disparity with the fans of, do we need a player that's going to come in and offer something different, or do we need a player that adds to the system that we already have? We've seen these discussions with Woklz and Saka, and even with the left wingers as well. But because I think they are major priority players and positions that we need to really think about, I don't think right wing is, but it is a place where we need to develop. And I think Mbuemo coming in offers someone that can be on that last line. He loves running in behind brilliantly well. He's strong under pressure, which I really like. And something I really like about Mbuemo especially is that he seems very quick with the ball. And what I mean by that is every time he receives it on the break or even in maybe settled possession, he wants to do things very quickly. He's very much a pass and give and go player. He very much wants to get in behind and he will create. There are certain times he has done that Saka ball where he comes into the centre deeper and crosses it back post brilliantly. He's also a great ball striker from anywhere on the pitch, being able to shoot from distance. He is very composed within the box, and his right foot and left foot are both very good, where he can go across goal or inside either way, which is something that I really like because his shot locations are very different, and it's something I think Arsenal are missing in that location. And when talking about wingers, I think specifically, there's obviously a lot of things you have to consider with these players. Anthony Gordon is another one on the left, which I haven't spoken about much, but I'm sure we'll get to that one day in the future. And he's the player that everyone loves because he just runs in behind, he's direct, he's a really good carrier with the ball, and also makes some really good passes from deep as well. Now, in my opinion, Mbuemo has that ability to do that. I think he's a much more of a final third player. I think he really comes alive in them areas. And ultimately, Arsenal signed players like Trossard just because of the finishing that he brought. And we can argue it's not been the best this season, but overall, Trossard has scored a lot of goals by just being one of the better ball strikers within the team. And one of the best things that I want for Arsenal is intelligent players going forward that can strike a ball, and I think Mbuemo really does bring that within the team. Now, I can see why a lot of people are maybe dishonest with this because he costs £50 million. That is not exactly cheap for a right wing replacement or backup, you could argue, because we do have Saka there. Now, I'm not sure what's going to go on with our forward line. It's still very much up in the air, but I think Reece Nelson should probably leave the club. He's on 100k a week. He's injured a lot, and even when he wasn't injured, we only gave him around 200 minutes a few years ago. So in my opinion, he's not really in Arteta's plans and shouldn't be in our plans, because I just think we've learned this season that Saka cannot play every game. Even when he's come back from injury, you can see the concerns that Saka has sometimes with his shooting, sometimes with his decision making, where he is still the elite player in our attacking line, but he just needs help sometimes, and we haven't got that from the midfield players around him, especially with Odegaard. So I just think that he needs a little bit more in there. And sometimes I think one of the big things with Saka is that obviously bringing in a Gyökeres, bringing in a Nico Williams will help, I think, balance the team a lot more. It will allow us to go down the left side a lot more and give Saka that little island he wants, where we kind of want him by himself at the end of the day. But I just feel like coming inside has been really hard for Saka, especially recently. A lot of the time he's getting shown out wide, which he is still brilliant for, but we don't have players in the box, so he's crossing it in. It's not really working. We're not really getting the players in there. And obviously you have to think that will change with a striker coming in, with Havertz coming back from injury. But it's still a concern I have. I want him to come inside and have the freedom to basically go where he wants. He is our best player and should have that freedom. I actually think Mbuemo really does help this within the squad. I think if he can come in on that right wing spot and play 50% of the games, maybe 60% of the games, most cup games, we can give Saka that considerable rest he needs on the right wing spot for games that maybe he isn't the best for. And even then, they can both play a half each in some games, which may be the best option. And also they bring something different. I also think it allows Arsenal to be a little bit more rotational with their team. I've been going on, I want us to sign 3 forwards because I want a striker, a left winger, and a versatile option. Now, Mbuemo isn't the biggest versatile option. He can maybe play false 9. He can definitely play on the right. However, that will give us other options to be versatile with. And one of them, in my opinion, is putting Saka into them central areas which we may need. Now, I'm not saying we should ever kick Odegaard out of the team. I'm still fundamentally in his camp where he should stay next season, and we'll see how he does. But I am a bit worried about Arsenal's right-hand side going into next season right now, with Nwaneri being the backup for Odegaard and Saka, and he's not even really been trusted over the last couple of months, which makes sense. He is still not at that physical strength level we need. And at his age, and I know Dalman's coming through as well, and I think Dalman's a brilliant player in these positions, but I just think there's a lot of pressure to put on these youngsters. If you get an Mbuemo in, he's 25, he's basically coming into his prime very soon. He's not a player that's going to develop and take time, maybe like a Xavi Simons. He can play on that right-hand side, and Saka can come in centrally some games. You can see Saka play right centre mid instead of an Odegaard or Nwaneri if Nwaneri's not fit, or we have an injury there, or there's some tactical concerns that you want to have. And his pressing is still very good, and he still understands the levels. And as a final third creator and a player that can also work from deep, Saka is that man that we would want in them positions because he is our best player. So I don't think Mbuemo coming in will just be the end of Saka. I think if anything, you'll see so much more of his expertise being used in better ways, and it will give more rest to people like Odegaard, Nwaneri, Saka, and kind of just gets the burden off of all them players on the right hand side. Because going into the summer, I'm worried that if we buy a left winger and a striker, we're still not going to have that on the right hand side, and we're going to be relying heavily on Saka and Odegaard, which has not helped us with the injuries and form that some of them have had this season. And I also think, going back to that whole Salah point, I honestly think that Arsenal this season have learned that we need to really stack the attack. Now, I have different opinions about the players that we've been linked, or what other people think, maybe about Watkins, or even keeping Trossard or Martinelli. But ultimately, I do think maybe you can get rid of players like Trossard, because I think that is fair at this point. But I think we need to stack talent going forward. Obviously not hoard talent. Obviously that's a very important thing. We need to be careful with the money that we're paying for these players, especially people like Nelson, who's 100k a week. But we just need talent, and we just need loads of different options. We had Sterling in, that didn't work, and I don't want to be in a position again where we panic buy a right winger to give Saka some help, which hasn't even worked and probably made everything even worse this year. Now, it's obviously not cheap, and we still don't really know what Arsenal are doing from terms of Partey staying or Trossard staying, in terms of who we're actually going to buy other than really Zubimendi. But I expect the club to buy some attackers, which we definitely need, and I still expect the club to kind of focus on that right wing spot a little bit, maybe after you've done the striker and left wing, and maybe buy a left winger that can play on both sides, which could be fine. But it's definitely up in the air what we're going to do, and I think that is a very important discussion to have. Now, Bryan Mbuemo isn't the perfect player in the world. He obviously comes from Brentford Brentford, who specifically do play a very different style in many ways to a lot of teams in the league. But I actually think there's quite a lot of similarities to Arsenal. They play a very direct style compared to many teams that don't really play that sort of long ball system. And they do like getting the long balls, header on, get to their wingers and get through. Arsenal have done that quite a lot and over the last few years, which is why we bought Raya from them, because he kind of knew how to play that long ball style. And I do think that could definitely work. I also think that Arsenal may need an outlet to just be out there a lot more. If we have a Havertz play in certain games, we know Havertz is going to come back and defend. He works really hard every game. And Mbuemo does work hard. He's not exactly like someone that's going to just put his foot off the gas, I think, especially coming to Arsenal. But he will be loving that freedom if he's allowed to go further up and push the defence back. You know, we've seen Raya very much struggle with central passes from long range, but he loves the ones out on the wide stretch. And I think with Mbuemo that could really help, especially with like a Havertz working with him, or even a Saka playing off him. And I think his physical level is really good enough. He scores a great amount of goals, I think 0.38 per game, which is a really good level to have in the Premier League. And I think more importantly, he brings that one-on-one dynamic play where he can bring players towards him and actually give Arsenal some space in other areas. I don't really see many other right wingers that Arsenal can get in who can do that. Obviously, you can get a Williams, he could play on the right, or a Semenyo, and they can do that to a good level, but they're not an out-and-out right wing specialist compared to Mbuemo, who can bring that. I think it gives Arsenal more dynamic options. If Saka gets injured, it's not that much of a concern where we can bring Mbuemo in. And at 25, he's not at an age where he has to develop. I think a lot of Arsenal's rumours have been players that kind of are coming in to be development players, which we need in the future. Now, I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with bringing a Williams in because I see the potential there, and he's already quite a good high level. The same with someone like Benjamin Šeško as well should be noted. But I do think Arsenal do need win now players, or players that are at least going to bring what we know they can and at least kind of give that level of scoring goals or creating chances. This is why I've been quite positive about the Gyökeres move. If we get Šeško, I'm not really concerned. I think both of them are incredible in different ways. But if we do, depends on that, we have to buy even a better winger who's out and out great now, or maybe vice versa, buy a younger one. This is why the links to Rodrigo, when I was quite negative last week, made me change a little bit, because I don't think the market, especially in the attacking areas in world football, is amazing. And I think if you get an Mbuemo in, a Rodrigo in, that would be an incredible wing positions to have going into the future. Then you can get rid of Trossard, then you can give Saka rest, and it's not too much of a concern. I would love an Mbuemo to come in, because I just don't see many wingers out there being great market opportunities for 50 mil. You know, 75 mil it cost apparently to get Semenyo, 76 mil it cost to get Rodrigo. 50 mil for Mbuemo is a steal, and I know he's on the wrong side. I know he is a right wing specialist. He isn't going to play on that left at all, but he can still have a use within the team. And I still think if Arsenal want these market opportunities for these undervalued players, I think Mbuemo is a brilliant player for that. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video. Obviously, I'm going to be doing more videos on different players that are linked with us, as obviously I've got a lot of things to say. I haven't really been here for a week, but let me know in the comments what you guys think about Mbuemo overall. I can understand the concerns about the price, but we'll have to see given the other signings that we make. And I'm no way saying that he should be a priority. I'm saying that we should sign left wing and striker first, but if we've got a little bit more money over, I would consider buying Mbuemo. Personally, I think he's great. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you guys as always, and I'll see you in the next one.